Kombucha is fermented tea. Produced by bacteria and yeast, it becomes fizzy, tangy, and healthy. The health benefits come from the probiotic effects of consuming the little dudes, that's the bacteria and yeast. If you want some, you should go buy some. But what if you wanted to make some instead? And have more fun? And save money too. Before we start, let me introduce you to the Bucha Bros. We love personification of microscopic organisms, don't we, folks? Your first step is going to be getting a vessel. My first one shattered because of poor temperature management. It was winter, poured in some boiling soapy water and it shattered, so be careful. Anyway, a good place to get stuff like this is at a thrift store, St. Vincent's, anything like that, and that's where I got 2 huge jars, very useful, and a fishbowl sort of thing with a spigot at the bottom. The spigot is important, that'll come in later. We also cleaned those at a safe temp this time, just let them come to room temperature and don't use blistering hot water if they're still a little cold, and that's great. You'll also want these bottles. I don't know how better to describe them. They have this resealable top, and my roommate just already had those. So do your homework, take a look, and see what you can find. The next move is to obtain a Scoby, that symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. I got a 3-pack from a very nice old lady on Facebook Marketplace. The spares that you're not using will need to go in a Scoby hotel, which is just a jar for them to sit in with a little extra kombucha. They will just sit there and they won't die if they're in their own little fluid. From here, you're going to want to follow directions. Whatever directions you want to follow. I used Internet Shaquille's recipe. Love that YouTuber, he does a great job. That recipe's pictured on screen, and that's what we did. You gotta make the tea, you gotta make a lot of tea, and it's important to wait for it to cool. This is one of those situations where the Scoby's not gonna be too happy if you still have boiling tea. So watch out for that. When the time comes, you put the Scoby in your vessel, and I call it the babushka hood. Basically, you need a breathable cloth, typically rubber banded down, and I happen to think that my old bandana looked really good on our vessel. After time passes, you'll notice a lot of interesting things happen. Our Scoby got really big. It, like a gas, expanded to fill its container, and it got very wide. We also had our first taste test. It was pretty good. A little acidic, but that's how it goes. And of course, it hasn't gone through the second ferment. The bottling was way easier thanks to that spigot on the bottom. But there was a little bonus part that we didn't realize at the time that I'll return to later. At this point, you're ready for the second ferment, where you add some flavoring into the bottle and then you seal it off, as opposed to the breathable phase in the earlier part. The flavorings I picked, cranberry and pineapple, and the key here is that the cranberry is not as sweet, and then the pineapple, quite sweet, and it also comes with pulp. That just happened to be the juice I bought, and that comes in later. But anyway, the second ferment, we just did it in the pantry, and they chilled there for about a week, couple days. It varied. I wasn't too strict about it. While this second ferment is happening, you'll observe that you can just keep on going. With new tea, we throw that in and we'll realize that the Scoby has gotten much bigger because this is its life cycle. It grows and multiplies as this all is happening, which is pretty cool. At this point, we realized that things were not getting too fizzy and we were curious why that might be. Is it that the second ferment was taking too long? Is it because the first ferment was taking too little? Does there need to be more sugar in the mixture? And we had many theories. We tried several of them, but I'll cut to the chase. The sediment in the bottom of the vessel that I'm calling grungle needs to be part of it. And I thought having a spigot container was like a cheat code. Oh, it'll be so easy to bottle. The official way to do it is you take the Scoby out and you mix everything up. So you can still use the spigot, but you want the solution to be all mixed up as opposed to dissolved. You don't want it separated. So upon doing that, in later batches, we found out that that is what adds to the fizz. And I also have a theory that pulp from the pineapple leads it to be fizzier, because even when we added sugar to the cranberry, it didn't get fizzier. My theory is that having actual fruit would help too. It was around this time we also added ginger. That's something I've seen on YouTube. Gives a little bit of a ginger spark, if you know how ginger tastes. And then finally, at the time I stopped recording to prepare for this video, we began an experiment with green tea sweetened with honey in a different vessel. And that resulted in some interesting things as well. One thing I noticed is that as the honey fermented, there was the honey flavor. It's the same thing you get with mead. If you've ever had honey wine, that's fermented honey, it has a bit of a twang to it. It might have been the tea we picked, that moringa, but it had this sort of I thought it smelled a little like sulfur, which was odd, but it still ended up tasting very good, especially when it was flavored with pineapple. Thanks so much for watching. If you feel inspired to try this yourself, I highly recommend it. It was a ton of fun, it's super cheap, and it's medicinal. I feel great drinking it. Either way, I wish you the best, and I'll see you next week.